All right, check this out. Dillian White insists I don't need to beat Alexander Povetkin to fight Deontay Wilder. He's got nothing now. So I'm going to be reading this little article where they quote Dillian White that I got on Talksport. I don't need to beat Povetkin to fight Deontay Wilder. The only thing Deontay Wilder held was the heavyweight championship of the world. He wasn't a big draw. He wasn't a big ticket seller. He wasn't even selling out arenas in America. And he's American. So he wasn't a big draw. He just had the belt and he lost the belt. So he's got nothing now. I definitely want the Deontay Wilder fight, but right now I'm focused on Povetkin, obviously. Povetkin's a serious guy, very serious operator. Once I beat Povetkin, let's see what happens. I want to fight for the world title. So he's basically saying that, as you can see, that the only reason he really wanted to face Deontay Wilder was because he was the champion. Obviously, at the time, Deontay Wilder was the WBC champion for like 5 years. And for the longest time, Dillian White was the mandatory or in the position to face Deontay Wilder next. But the WBC gave Deontay Wilder, opportunities to face other fighters. And they, for some reason, always made Dillian White fight for like a title eliminator. But obviously Deontay Wilder went on to lose to Tyson Fury, and now Tyson Fury is the WBC champion. So he says he still wants to fight Deontay Wilder, but at the same time he says that the only reason he basically wanted to fight Deontay Wilder was because he was the champion and he wanted to obviously fight for the WBC championship belt, but he still wants to face Deontay Wilder. Now obviously he says Deontay Wilder's not a big draw. A lot of people have their opinions on that, of Deontay Wilder being a big draw or not being a big draw or not being a big name in heavyweight boxing or in America. I definitely do think that Deontay Wilder is a name and a big name because everybody talks about him. Even if you don't like Deontay Wilder, everybody talks about Deontay Wilder. Even if you make videos trashing Deontay Wilder, I've seen so many people who do not like Deontay Wilder making videos trashing about him, trashing him. So people know Deontay Wilder. People talk about Deontay Wilder. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a massive draw and like everybody knows who he is. But he's definitely a known fighter, especially in the heavyweight division. I mean, when you think about the heavyweight division, Deontay Wilder's name pops up there. He's right at the top. You think about Anthony Joshua, you think about Tyson Fury, and guess what? And guess what? You also think about Deontay Wilder. He's always at the top. People are always talking about him. So I never believe when, people say, oh, Deontay Wilder's not really a big name. So I don't really buy that. Obviously, of course, Dillian White's going to talk shit. He doesn't like Deontay Wilder. But obviously, Dillian White right now is going to be facing Alexander Povetkin, and he got knocked out against Alexander Povetkin last year. So he needs to really beat Alexander Povetkin, because if he doesn't, he's not going to be fighting for no world championship belt at all, right? Povetkin's going to be the one probably getting the opportunity. But he has to beat Povetkin. So that's a fight that I hope Dillian White's taking very seriously, because he got knocked out cold in the first time. So he needs to take that fight seriously. Because Povetkin, if he can knock him out once, he can knock him out again. They're going to fight later on in a couple of weeks. So let's see what happens if he could get past Povetkin. And then, obviously, but the thing is, he's going to have to wait and see, because obviously right now Tyson Fury is going to be facing Anthony Joshua possibly twice. So he's going to have to wait and see who wins that fight. What's the outcome of that fight to face? Or maybe they could fight, because he says he still wants to fight Deontay Wilder. Maybe he could still fight. They could still make the fight with Deontay Wilder. That would be an interesting fight. I would love to see Deontay Wilder versus Dillian White. I've always said that I picked Deontay Wilder to beat Dillian White, just because I think stylistically, Dillian White is tailor-made for Deontay Wilder, because he's a sitting duck for that right hand. And Wilder's much quicker with his punches than Dillian White. And, I've seen Dillian White get rocked with the right hand by lesser opposition than somebody like Deontay Wilder. And, especially now that he's been knocked out. But obviously, that's just my opinion of it. What do you guys think? I mean, would you guys want to see Dillian White versus Deontay Wilder? I want to see it, just because that's one of those fights that if it never happens, people will always say, oh, this guy, Wilder ducked Dillian White and stuff like that. So that's why I would just like to see it, just for like, I don't want in the future people be saying that Wilder ducked this guy, or, these guys never fought and it's some bullshit fight. It's kind of like Riddick Bowe versus Mike Tyson. They could have fought. Riddick Bowe and Mike Tyson were in the same era, but they never fought. But they could have fought. You know, if Deontay Wilder and Dillian White never fight, you know, people years from now are gonna be like, man, how come they never fought? They could have fought. They were in the same era. So yeah, you know, for a championship bout, without a championship bout, I would love to see Dillian White versus Deontay Wilder, just because I think that's one of those fights that should happen because they're in the same era and they're both big punchers, and this is a both of their fan bases have rivalries. Like Dillian White fans, like hardcore Dillian White fans, do not like Deontay Wilder, and hardcore Deontay Wilder fans do not like Dillian White. It's like a rivalry. It's a rivalry there. You know, you always see the rivalry, but they don't like each other. So I personally would love to see that fight. But Dillian White, like he said, has to focus right now on Alexander Povetkin because that's a fight where he could lose again if he's not careful. I do think that if Dillian White prepared himself properly against Alexander Povetkin, he could beat him because he was actually having success in the first fight until he got sloppy and he got caught. So he needs to really focus on Alexander Povetkin. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching.